boys and girls, it's me, Mrs. Abbott. Today we're going to read chapter 10 of our story. We've been talking a lot about comparisons. Today we're going to be paying a little more attention to the sequence of the story and specifically of the chapter. So I'm going to read the chapter today, and I want you to pick out 5 key details of all the part that I read today that you think were the most important to the story. So what happened first in the chapter, an important thing that happened next, third, fourth, and fifth. Okay. Billy ate steadily, grimacing, rubbing his nose, spreading on more horseradish sauce. I think grimacing is an expression that he must make. And it's an expression that he's making when he's eating something like a worm. So I wonder what grimacing means. Tom bent over him, hissing in his ear, "Fish, fish, 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 fish." Billy paused, watching Alan and Joe whispering by the door. He swished the last bite round and round in the ketchup and mustard. All of a sudden he said, "That's not fair. They can't act like that anymore. Every time I swallow, they lean forward as if they expected me to keel over or something. And then, when I don't, they look surprised and shrug their shoulders and nudge each other." "Come on," said Joe. "Cut it out. We can watch you for cripe's sake. We're just standing over here by the window watching you." "No, you're not," said Billy. "You're whispering and acting as if you expected something to happen every time I swallow." "It's nothing," said Joe. "Forget it. Look, we'll turn around and look out the window while you swallow." "What do you mean it's nothing?" said Billy. "What's nothing?" "Oh, come on," said Alan. "It's just something Joe's father told him the other night. It's nothing." "What? What? What?" "It'll just worry you," said Alan. "It's crazy. It's nothing. Forget it." Billy tore the napkin away from his throat. "Tell me." "It's nothing," said Joe. "You know how my father is. He's always yelling about something." "Tell me or it's all off." "Well, look, it's nothing. But the night before last, I was telling Jamie about you eating the worms, and my father was on the porch and he heard us. So he threw down his newspaper and says, 'Joseph!' So I says, 'Yes, Pa?' And he says, 'Have you ate a worm, Joseph?' And then he grabbed my shoulders and shook me till my hands danced at the end of my arms like puppets. 'It's for your own good,' he says. So I stuttered out, 'It's not going to make me do it good if I shake it to pieces, is it?' Janie was wailing. My mother was chewing her apron in the doorway. 'Alfred,' she cries, 'what's he done?' 'You'll shake him. Has he hauled down the American flag at school and eaten it again? Has he?' 'So what's the point?' yelled Billy. 'Get to the point. What does all this have to do with me?' 'I'm coming to it,' said Joe, wiping his nose. 'But I wanted to show you how important it is. My father nearly shaking me and all.' He sneezed, and then Alan began to sneeze, and finally had to hobble off one of the horse stalls, hugging his stomach to recover. 'Anyway,' said Joe, wiping his nose again and hitching up his Levi's. Hitching, what do you guys think that means? Hitching up his Levi's. So he's hitching up something, his pants, his Levi pants. So my father told my mother he thought I'd eaten a worm. 'A what?' says my mother, dropping her apron and clutching the sides of her head. 'A worm,' said my father, nodding solemnly. So my mother fainted, collapsed, all helter-skelter right there in the doorway, lay still, her tongue lolling out her mouth, her red hair spread out beautifully on the doorsill. So "Will you cut it out?" Billy yelled. "Who cares about your mother? What does it have to do with me?" "I think he's lying," said Tom. "Who ever heard of someone's mother fainting and her tongue hanging out?" All right, said Joe apoplectically, stamping around. All right, now I won't tell. You can die, Billy Forrester, and you'll have to carry him alone, Tom Grout, all by yourself. Nobody says to me, who cares about your mother? All right, I'm going, Ellen, he yelled. They're insulting my mother. I'm going. Don't, said Alan, running out of the horse stall and grabbing Joe by the shirt tail. Don't, you've got to tell him. Even your mother'd say so. Mine too, no matter what he said. Ain't it a matter of life and death? I won't, said Joe, starting toward the door. Alan pulled him back. You've got to. How long have we known poor old Bill? 6, 7 years? For old time's sake, Joe, because we were all once kindergarten together. Think of the agony he'll face, Joe. The blood and the pain and the gore. What do you guys think that what do you think they're gonna tell Billy? Billy was on his knees by the orange crate, wringing his hands, not daring to interfere. But when Joe glanced sullenly at him, he whispered, Please, Joe, for old time's sake. Well, will you apologize for insulting my mother? I do, said Billy. I do apologize. So Alan and Joe began to sneeze again, and this time had to bend over and put their heads between their legs to recover. Why do you think they're sneezing so much? I'm suspicious. Tom, who had been watching them suspiciously, trying to make out what was going on, started to say something. Shut up, hissed Billy, fiercely turning on him. You keep out of it. So Joe went on with his story, how his mother had been carried upstairs to her room, how the doctor had come shaking his head, how his aunt had sobbed, pulling down all the shades in their house, how that morning his mother had finally come downstairs for the first time, leaning on his aunt's arm, pale and sorrowful. How, yeah, said Tom, sure. So why? What does eating worms do to you? Nobody will tell me, said Joe, opening his eyes wide. It's been 3 days now, and nobody'll say. It's just like the time my cousin Lucy got caught. Nobody'll tell me why there was such an uproar. He wiped his mouth. But one thing's sure, it's worse than poison, probably. Nuts, said Tom. Oh, yeah, said Joe. But then he and Alan had another sneezing fit, sprawling helplessly against each other. Look at them, said Tom to Billy. They're not sneezing, they're laughing. Is that what you guys were thinking? Come on, eat the last piece and let's get out of here. You really think so? Said Billy doubtfully. The sneezing did look an awful lot like giggling. Sure, look at them. Tom gave Alan and Joe a shove. They collapsed in a heap, sneezing uncontrollably. Billy watched them. Yeah, sure. They weren't sneezing. They were laughing, weren't they? Hay fever, gasped Alan. Hay fever. Ah, you never had hay fever before, said Tom. How about yesterday or the day before? Come on, Billy, open up. So Billy, half believing Tom and half not, glancing doubtfully at Alan and Joe, allowed Tom to poke the last bit of worm into his mouth and lead him into the barn. Alan and Joe sat up. It didn't work, said Alan. Joe began to brush the chafe out of his hair. You wait. He wasn't sure. Tom was, but he isn't eating the worms. You wait. Billy's worried. He was before. That's why he said he felt like he was going to throw up. But now he's really worried. Suppose I wasn't lying. Did you see his face when I said my father shook me? I thought his eyes would bug right out of his head. Alan laughed. Oh, yeah. And when you said your mother fainted. Joe stopped brushing the chaff out of his hair. Except, why'd you laugh so much, for heaven's sakes? If you'd kept a straight face, even Tom wouldn't have guessed. Ah, you laughed first. What do you mean? Me? I laughed first? I did not. You did so. You laughed, and when he yelled at you the first time, you wiped your nose. They went off through the meadow, arguing. So what was the sequence of that chapter? There should be 4 or 5 main events that you noticed. So tell your mom or dad, and we'll see you tomorrow.